Hey, namaste. I'm Kay. This is Ecstatic Self. Today, I want to talk about sex and what is it and why it's more than fucking. So, I got into an interesting conversation the other day with somebody where they were asking about, they were talking about how often they had sex with partners or with a partner. And we got into this conversation about, well, what is sex? And I think it's an easier question to define for heterosexual sex, penis and vagina sex, because I think for a lot of, to not use a terribly inclusive word, but for a lot of straight people, insert penis into vagina, we are having sex. But certainly there's a lot of straight people who view oral sex as sex, who views mutual masturbation as sex, other forms of erotic touch as sex. But in the gay and queer community, it becomes a little bit more indiscriminate, right? Because if we just say inserting penis into anus for gay men is sex, I've had sex with very few people by that standard. 3, in fact. And especially, lesbians, there's that old joke of, as Hannah Gadsby, one of my heroes says, what do they even do really? There's no harm in a cuddle. What is sex? And so when we were talking about, well, what does sex mean for you? What kind of sexual relationships have you had? And we said, well, if we say sex is an intimate encounter with somebody else, which could be inclusive of oral sex, it could be inclusive of mutual masturbation, but it could also be inclusive of sensual touch, right? Like if you get naked together or give each other a massage, could that be considered sex? A lot of times me and my husband make love and there may not be actual insertion of things into places, right? It may just mainly be kissing and petting and stroking, and I still consider that sex. So then where does the line end, right? Because really what we're talking about is vulnerability, connection, intimacy, right? That I see you, I'm here with you, we are intentionally, energetically engaging in a sensual experience. So by this standard, could me having dinner with you at a restaurant and making intentional eye contact and connecting energetically and feeling our energy mingling, maybe our feet touching under the table, could that even be considered sex? I think when we start to break down the barriers of what is sex, what is not sex, it becomes a little more of a spectrum and a little bit more of a gray zone. And the reason I bring this up is I feel like there's a lot of judgment, a lot of pressure, a lot of discrimination and posing around what I do in the bedroom and what it defines me as a person, especially for men, right? Like that for me to be a man, there's an involvement of me inserting my penis into someone. And I define macho-ness by how willing I'm able to do so. And that's a really hard thing to hold, because then what does that say to somebody who prefers receptive sex, right? That prefers to be penetrated? What does that say for men who don't have penises, that have vaginas, or have, a different arrangement altogether? I think we need to be more inclusive and open about this idea of what does sexual interaction look like. And I think one of the beautiful things that comes from this is that there's a lot of people who really struggle with connection, who really struggle with intimacy, and struggle with maybe how they connect sexually. Like I work with a lot of people who struggle with sexual addiction, and to see really I think the thing that we all crave is intimacy. We want to feel thoroughly connected. We want to be with someone, and that can be anonymous, right? You can have an incredibly intimate and amazing experience with someone whose name you don't even know, that you just met. But it's about this willingness to let down your barriers, to be vulnerable, to open, to hold someone, to be with them, to be present with them, to share energy, to connect. And then once you get comfortable with this idea of connection and intimacy is what I crave and what gives me fulfillment, then sex can take any form, right? You could massage each other's shoulders and feel like it's sex. You could fuck and feel like it's sex. There's plenty of times where it's just as fulfilling for me to walk with my husband hand in hand, and I just play with each other's fingers as we walk, and it feels just as erotic and stimulating as getting a blowjob. So I think this is an interesting conversation to have. I think it's an interesting perspective to start delving into, but what do we mean by sex? And it's not just fucking. And what do we really want out of a sexual experience? Because I think the thing that we all need is connection. Because when we feel connected with the people around us, we feel happy, we feel healthy, we feel whole. Even if you're a big old introvert like I am, I still want to feel connected. I want to feel like I belong. I want to have a sense of community. And the only way through that is intimacy. And we don't want to mistake sex and intimacy. Right? We don't want to say, I crave connection, so I'm just going to fuck everybody. It's about saying, hey, I want to connect. And sometimes it may be sexual. Sometimes it may be fucking. Sometimes it might be blank. But I know what I want, and I know how to get it, and I know how to negotiate those things, and I'm not confusing one for another. This is something we'll dive into again in much greater depth, because there's a lot of work here. It's something I worked on a lot with my one-on-one clients. I hope you have a great day. Namaste.